The gym still smelled like sweat and floor cleaner when practice ended. Basketballs rolled lazily across the polished wood as kids gathered their backpacks, voices overlapping in that loud, unfiltered way only middle schoolers had. The after-school program was supposed to be a safe place, somewhere parents trusted, somewhere kids learned teamwork instead of fear. For Louise Thompson, it hadn't felt safe for weeks. Louise, black, 12 years old, small for his age, stood near the bleachers, lacing his sneakers slowly. He liked to wait until most of the other kids left. It gave him time to breathe. His accent was the reason. It wasn't heavy. Just enough of his Caribbean roots still clung to certain words, stretching vowels, softening consonants. At home, it was normal. At school, it made him visible. Too visible. "Hey Louise," Coach Brian Walker called out from center court. Coach Walker, white, early 40s, loud, always pacing, held a clipboard under one arm. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. Louise looked up. "Yes, Coach?" Walker tilted his head. "Say that again." Louise hesitated. "Yes, Coach?" A few kids nearby slowed down, sensing something. Walker chuckled. "Man, you hear that? It's like he's singing." A couple of boys laughed. Louise felt his face heat up. He kept his eyes on the floor. "Come on," Walker continued. "You gotta talk normal if you want to play varsity one day. Say it right." Louise swallowed. "I did." Walker shook his head exaggeratedly. "Nah, that accent thing? You should drop it. This isn't wherever you're from." The gym went quiet. Louise's chest tightened. He thought about his mom waiting in the car, always asking how practice went. He thought about how badly he wanted to belong here. "I can't," he said softly. "This is how I talk." Walker laughed again, louder this time. "Then you better get used to sitting the bench." Something inside Louise folded in on itself. "Practice is over," Walker said, waving his hand. "Everyone out." Louise grabbed his bag and walked toward the exit, ears ringing. He didn't cry, not yet. He waited until he was outside, until the heavy gym doors shut behind him. That was when he took out his phone. His mom had sent him a voice note earlier, wishing him luck, telling him she was proud of him. He stared at it for a second, then tapped record. His voice shook at first. "Mom," he whispered, "Coach makes fun of how I talk. He says I sound stupid." A car door opened nearby. Louise looked up and saw his mother, Danielle Thompson, standing a few feet away, phone already in her hand. She had heard everything. Her face didn't show anger yet, just focus. "Send that to me," she said quietly. Louise did. Neither of them knew it yet, but that voice note wouldn't stay private. It was going to be played out loud, and when it was, an entire board would finally hear what one coach thought was just a joke. Danielle didn't speak as they drove home. Her hands stayed steady on the steering wheel, eyes forward, jaw set in a way Louise recognized. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was concentration. The kind his mum got when something shifted from personal to serious. Louise sat quietly in the passenger seat, backpack clutched in his lap. The adrenaline from practice had faded, leaving behind a dull ache in his chest. "I didn't want to get him in trouble," he said finally. Danielle glanced at him, then back to the road. "You didn't," she replied. "He did." At home, Danielle told Louise to go shower and start his homework. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but once he disappeared down the hallway, she sat at the kitchen table and pressed play. Louise's voice filled the room, small, shaky, honest. "Coach makes fun of how I talk. He says I sound stupid." Danielle closed her eyes. She listened again, then a third time. After that, she opened a folder on her laptop labeled School, After School Program. Inside were emails, enrollment forms, and the code of conduct every parent had signed at the beginning of the year. She scrolled slowly, deliberately. "Students will be treated with respect regardless of background, language, or cultural identity." Danielle leaned back in her chair. She forwarded the voice note to herself. Then she saved it to the cloud. Then to a flash drive. Documentation. At 9:14 p.m, she sent an email. Subject: formal concern regarding coach conduct. She kept it factual. No accusations. No emotion. My son reported repeated comments by Coach Brian Walker regarding his accent. I have attached an audio recording made immediately after today's practice. She attached the file. She CC'd the program director, then the school principal, then the district after-school coordinator. She hit send. The reply didn't come that night. But the next morning, Danielle's phone buzzed while she was packing Luis's lunch. We would like to discuss this matter further. Please attend the board meeting this Thursday. Luis looked up from the table. What's a board meeting? Danielle met his eyes. It's where adults have to listen. Luis frowned. Do I have to talk? No, she said gently. Your voice already did. At school that day, Luis kept his head down. Coach Walker didn't say anything to him, didn't even look his way. Practice went on like nothing had happened. But something had happened. On Danielle's laptop, the voice note sat, saved, unchanged, waiting. Because on Thursday evening, in a room full of adults who'd never heard Luis speak before, they were going to hear him very clearly. The boardroom was colder than Luis expected, not temperature-wise, but in the way spaces felt when they were designed to be formal instead of kind. Long table, hard chairs, flags in the corner. A microphone in the center that looked too big for anyone who might actually need it. Luis sat beside his mother, feet not quite touching the floor, hands folded tightly in his lap. Danielle rested a hand on his knee, steady, present. Across the table sat 7 adults, school board members, the after-school program director, and the principal. At the far end of the room, leaning back in his chair, was Coach Brian Walker. He didn't look at Luis. He didn't look at Danielle either. He stared at the wall behind them, arms crossed, expression bored, like this was an inconvenience, not a reckoning. The board chair cleared her throat. Thank you all for coming. We're here to address a concern regarding student treatment during the after-school basketball program. She glanced down at her notes. Specifically, comments made about a student's accent. Coach Walker shifted slightly, but said nothing. Danielle spoke calmly. My son didn't feel safe speaking up in the moment, so he spoke to me. The chair nodded. And you submitted an audio recording. Yes, Danielle said, with my son's permission. The room went quiet. The chair looked around the table. We'll play it now. Luis's heart started pounding. Danielle squeezed his knee once. Then the speaker crackled to life. Luis heard his own voice fill the room. Small, nervous, unfiltered. Coach makes fun of how I talk. He says I sound stupid. A couple of board members shifted in their seats. The recording continued, Luis explaining how long it had been happening, how other kids laughed, how he tried to talk less so he wouldn't be noticed. When it ended, the silence was heavy, not awkward, uncomfortable. Coach Walker let out a short laugh. That's not how it happened. Every head turned toward him. I joke with the kids, he said. It's locker room stuff. Builds toughness. The principal frowned. About a child's accent? Walker shrugged. I never said stupid. Kids exaggerate. Danielle didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. The board chair leaned forward. The recording is time-stamped, made immediately after practice. Another member added, and your own program guidelines prohibit mocking language or cultural background. Walker scoffed. So now we're policing words? Luis shrank slightly in his chair. Danielle felt it, and spoke. My son stopped wanting to speak, she said quietly. That's not toughness, that's harm. Walker finally looked at Luis. For the first time, Luis met his eyes, didn't smile, didn't look away, just stayed. The board chair nodded slowly. We'll need to review this further. Danielle reached into her bag and placed a flash drive on the table. There's more, she said. Other recordings, other dates. Walker's posture stiffened, because suddenly this wasn't one moment. It was a pattern, and patterns were harder to joke away. The chair picked up the flash drive. Thank you for bringing this forward. Luis's voice trembled as he finally spoke. I just want to play basketball. I don't want to feel bad about how I talk. No one laughed. No one interrupted. For the first time, every adult in the room was listening, and Coach Walker, still silent now, understood something too late. The voice note he'd never expected to matter had already said everything he couldn't explain away. The decision didn't come immediately. The board recessed for 20 minutes, leaving Danielle and Luis alone in the room with the principal. Coach Walker was asked to wait outside. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. Luis swung his feet nervously. Am I in trouble? Danielle turned toward him fully. No, you were brave. He nodded, not fully convinced yet. When the board members returned, their expressions were different. Heavier, more deliberate. The chair took her seat and folded her hands. Thank you for your patience, she said. After reviewing the audio, the submitted materials, and the program's code of conduct, we've reached a decision. Luis held his breath. Coach Brian Walker is being removed from all after-school activities effective immediately, she continued, pending mandatory training and a formal review. Danielle exhaled slowly. The chair went on. Additionally, we will be implementing staff training on linguistic bias and cultural respect across all extracurricular programs. One of the board members looked directly at Luis. You did the right thing by speaking up. Luis nodded, his throat tight. Thank you. Coach Walker was brought back into the room. He looked smaller now, quieter. He didn't argue, he didn't joke. He simply nodded as the decision was read aloud. When it was over, Danielle and Luis walked out into the evening air. The sky was deep blue, the school lights glowing behind them. Luis looked up at his mom. They believed me. They heard you, Danielle corrected gently. There's a difference. The next week at practice, a new coach introduced himself. He asked everyone's names, carefully. When Luis spoke, no one laughed. No one corrected him. After practice, one of the boys nudged him. Your accent's kinda cool, he said. Luis smiled. At home that night, Danielle saved the final email from the board in the same folder as the voice note. She didn't delete the recording, not because she needed it anymore, but because it reminded her of something important. That voices didn't have to be loud to be powerful. That truth didn't need polish. And that when systems tried to look away, sometimes all it took was pressing play. Luis went to bed that night, lighter than he'd felt in weeks. His voice hadn't changed, but the room finally had.